Here's a topic that I get asked all the time, which is how do I get a job in project management? And if you want to be a PM, this is a job where organized chaos is a superpower. We turn ideas into reality. We drive delivery. It's in every industry, every company. So there's high demand, good salaries, and clear career paths. But where do you get started? The good news is you don't need to have a title. You don't need to necessarily have a ton of experience. We're going to talk about how to break into the field, how to get some skills, some experience, organize your resume, what to do with the interviews. Stick with me, and ideally, you will leave with a plan on what to do. So, today we're going to talk about what is project management? Why is it a good career choice? There's skills that companies are looking for in PM candidates. I've interviewed hundreds of candidates. I know the skills that we're looking for. But then there's getting the job, which is about tailoring your resume, getting the right amount of experience, even if you don't have it relative to your current job, and what you need to do during the interview and how can you stand out. So let's jump into it. What's project management? At the highest level, we help companies achieve their goals. Companies have big strategic initiatives. They spend billions of dollars on projects and technology and investments, and they need people to drive those things to closure, and that's what we do. We bring discipline, we bring a goal-oriented process to make sure that we're delivering against the things that we said we would do, and that's where scope and budget and timelines come in. Most projects have dozens, hundreds of people who work on them. So we coordinate the people, we coordinate the tasks to make sure that the work is moving smoothly. We also manage time and resources to make sure that we can deliver against our timelines with the resources we have within the dollars that we have. There's always challenges. So we spend a lot of time on risk and issue management. And then we spend 80% of our time communicating, whether that's collaborations, meetings, preparing for meetings, stakeholder conversations, and so on. So that's in a nutshell, really high level, what is project management. I have a completely separate video that breaks down project management in the metaphor of a road trip. So then why is project management a good career? Well, as I stated, companies spend billions of dollars. They keep increasing their spend on strategic projects because of competition, because of technology. There's high demand in every industry. I feel like I could go to a construction job and still be successful, a technology job, because sort of this core skill sets of project management. So that means there's career mobility. I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in insurance, I've worked at consulting companies, I've worked at tech companies. People who like organizing and collaborating and partnering with teams, it's a great fit. You can lead without formal authority. Sometimes you do have the formal authority. Generally speaking, it's good salaries. We've got certifications and industries and the Project Management Institute. I personally like the satisfaction of completing something when you finish a project, that you've actually done something. You will never be bored, and you might actually even get to be a superhero by delivering something that nobody else could. So, what does a typical career look like? Well, generally, folks start as sort of an assistant role where they support a project management office, maybe some documentation, preparing for meetings, some basic coordination. And as they move up, they get into more sort of day to day project coordination, tracking tasks, maybe running down some action items. Then you get into sort of a project manager where you're managing a project yourself, where you're overseeing the scope and the schedule, the budgets, and you're accountable for a particular piece of scope and budget. Then as you move up, there's either a larger project or a grouping of projects, which is a program where you're a program manager and now you're coordinating project managers and work streams, which is sort of a different skill set. And ultimately, you can get to be sort of director or more senior where you're overseeing the actual function. So the good news is there is a career path in project management with multiple levels in it. So, look, here's my recommendations if you really want to get into it. It sounds good. What do I do? I would say there's really 7 things to think about. First, you want to build the skill sets that companies are looking for. And the good news is, I actually think the best project managers have a certain set of skills, some of which aren't necessarily learned. So the good news is, if you're organized, if you're good at critical thinking, you're good at communications, you could be a natural fit for project management without necessarily the experience. However, you actually want to get some experience. And you can do this in lots of ways, whether it's organizing for your church or volunteering or doing other things. So you don't actually have to have it in your current role to get that experience. Third, there's all sorts of certifications if you're interested in it. And I'll go through what those are. That gives credibility to your background. I'm a big believer, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about this, is tailoring your resume. I see all the time people just take the same resume and just upload it to all different jobs. You really got to tailor your resume to the role that you're looking for, and there's a way to do that for project managers. Then there's networking. Probably the top thing you can do to get a job is work within your network, because the market is so saturated now that every posting, when you look on LinkedIn, says 200, 300, 400 people applied to the job. So if you're just one in 400 without a contact, then how do you sort of stand out? And you have a really low probability of doing that. And then finally, if you do get the interview, you want to make sure that you're prepared as much as possible. So we're going to go into each of these. I said 7. There's 6 of them on the page here, so apologize for that. But we're going to go into each of these into a little more detail. So first, let's talk about the skill sets. These are, I believe, project managers have sort of 3 buckets of skill sets, starting with fundamentals. And there's a whole PMBOK, the Project Management Book of Knowledge, body of knowledge, that goes into each of the different categories of project management: risk management, schedule management, budget management. And these are sort of the fundamental techniques. I think these are very learnable and teachable, and there's lots of materials out there to do it. The middle bucket, I think, is less teachable, and these are the soft or the consultative skills. Things like influencing others, negotiation, facilitation. If you think about it, programs are large matrices of people who don't report to you. So you have to facilitate and you have to negotiate because they have other priorities. And so these are the softer skills that are the ones that I think, if you bring these to the table, these are the ones that I think will differentiate you. And then there's acumen, right? How well do you know the business or the industry or the technology and products that you're in? Here in the upper right, you'll see this is actually based on a book that I wrote, The Consultative PM. I also have a presentation on this you can go look at if you don't want to read the book. But there's 36 competencies that I think are the ones that make PMs successful. So first, know yourself and know your skills and figure out which ones you bring to the table, especially in that middle category. And those are the ones you want to anchor on. Then I talked about not necessarily having experience, which is fine, right? So there's ways that you can still gain that experience without necessarily having that as part of your current day job. Just learn the basics of the methodologies. There's frameworks. Like I said, there's so much content out there. My YouTube channel is free. I've got no shortage of content on all these different topics. You can volunteer for project-like work. Maybe lead a small initiative where you're building a plan and you're coordinating people just to get a sense of it. You could shadow somebody who does it for a living, find a mentor, maybe observe a PM in your organization, just get a sense of what they're doing. Build your own portfolio. I take a lot of vacations and travel, and I view those as a project plan. I have a plan, I have activities that need to get done, I have a budget, right? I mentioned there's different certifications that'll give you a sense, and we'll go into what those are. And then just start using tools, just start building plans. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be Excel, it could be Word, but the idea is just to get out there and start learning. From a perspective of certifications, there's really a couple different levels. I think if you're looking for a PM job, you're probably thinking more of the entry level ones. And the Project Management Institute has their CAP-M, which is for sort of new PMs. And by the way, all of these have some set of criteria that you need to have a certain amount of work experience or so on. So make sure you do your research. Google has a PM certificate. There's all sorts of LinkedIn Learning. I think most of it's free and so on. And then as you get more experience, you'll see there's other ones on the right. But I think the CAP-M is probably the industry standard for somebody who's interested in getting into project management and wants sort of a ground level. As I mentioned, tailoring your resume is so important. Do not take a generic resume, send it out to every company. If you want a project management job, you want to organize your resume around a project manager role and experience. So you want to highlight certain skills like the ones I mentioned in the competencies. You want to use PM language, deliver this, manage that. As we all know, there's now AI screens for pretty much all job postings, and so you want to put words in there that are going to stand out and sort of trigger the algorithm. You want to quantify your achievements with metrics. So, led an initiative that realized $100 million in financial savings, right? So you want to put quantified metrics in there so that it shows the impact of the work you do. Cross-functional or any kind of collaboration is always big. And you want to really think about how are you going to stand out. Again, if there's 300 people applying to this role, how is your resume going to be different than 299 of them? And what are the things that you're going to anchor on? And there's different techniques to how to organize your resume. Do not have a sloppy resume. Do not have just rambling words. Do not have bad grammar or bad formatting. And there's all sorts of ways that you can research how to have sort of a cleaner resume. But the punchline here is you want a PM role. You want to tailor your resume to say that you can do a PM role. Then networking, just as important. Most jobs, actually the last 4 jobs that I've gotten have all been through contacts that I've had. And networking is so important, especially when there's so much supply in the marketplace right now and roles are getting reduced with AI and cost cutting and so on. And so you can connect with people on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me, by the way. You can attend different PM meetings or webinars, conferences. I belong to the local PMI chapter and I speak at other PMI chapters. I was a board member, so those are great forums to talk to people, similar like minded people about project management topics. Maybe there's informational interviews, sharing your learning publicly and posting maybe on LinkedIn or other places where people might be able to respond to you, follow PM thought leaders. And so just sort of being part of the PM practice and being part of that network will yield a ton of benefits, if not short term, than in the long term. So then use that network to get the interviews. Let people know you're pursuing roles. Ask for referrals. Share your resume and target roles. I review people's resumes all the time. They send me to them for feedback. Request feedback from experienced PMs. Stay on top of mind with periodic updates. You want to post things out there, maybe some thought leaderships, maybe some articles so that people just see your name and associate that to project management. And you're really trying to build these relationships. As I mentioned, my entire career, every role except for the one I got out of college was based on a network that I had. So it's an important lifelong skill if you want to stay in business. So now you've gotten the opportunity to interview. As I mentioned, there's a lot of demand out there. A lot of supply. And so you want to make sure you're as most prepared as you possibly can. This first bullet sounds simple, but I'm telling you, I interview people who don't even look at what my company does or the role it is, and they're just looking for a job. You want to research the company, understand the products, understand their culture. And when you're in the interview, make sure that you point it out. Bring up something that demonstrates that you're aware of it, that you understand what they're doing. This star format is something you can look at. It's a way of organizing sort of what you did. I think it's like situation, achieve, result, something like that, right? What you did in there, which might be task. But the point is, you want to have organize your experience not into, hey, I ran meetings or, I did this, but here's what I did. Here's the impact of what I did. Here's the results. Here's what I learned. And practice it. When I've interviewed for other places, I sort of think out loud how I would answer for the questions. Make sure you're ready to walk through your examples and prepare thoughtful questions. Make sure you have questions at the end. I also see this a lot. I'll ask people if they have questions, so they're not prepared for the meeting and they don't have any questions for me. And you don't want to just show up like, hey, I just need a job. You want to demonstrate that you're the best candidate for them. There's a couple of common questions I think that show up in interviews that you should be prepared for. Tell me about a project you managed. And again, you want to focus on the results and the impact and your role, what you did on that job to drive the work forward. How did you handle risks and issues? This might be a situational question. Tell me about a situation when you had a conflict or you had a risk and how you resolved it. Managing difficult stakeholders, that happens everywhere. How do you prioritize work? What tools and methodologies have you used? So the point is there's different kinds of questions. Most of them are going to be situational. So you want to have sort of in your back pocket a set of examples of particular scenarios or case studies that you can then talk to that demonstrate how you think through things and how you approach them, which is pretty much the intention of these, right? They want to understand your thought process and your experiences. And so, how do you answer the questions? Here's the star piece again. It's situation. Here's what happened. The task. Here's what I did. Here's the action I took. And then here's the result, right? I had this risk. This thing came up. I convened a bunch of people. And as a result, we closed it off, or, something like that. What is the decision making process? Again, the interviewing questions are set up in a way to help you point out how you think through things. What is your decision making process? So the example almost doesn't matter so much as the thought process that you took. And so you want to think about how you're going to articulate that. Show how you collaborate with others, right? Organizations want people that work well with others because everything's a matrix these days. Make sure you have measurable outcomes, especially if they're significant. You talk about adaptability, right? The business environment is always changing, but you also want to be concise and structured. I hate when I'm on an interview, a 20-minute interview with somebody, and they ramble for the first 10 minutes, on one question. So make sure that you're concise, and especially during the interview, pick up on verbal and nonverbal cues. If you're sort of losing the person, then that's time to make it a little more succinct. And at the end of the day, you want to stand out. So, as I mentioned, do your research on the company. Show that you understand the business and the project, that you've done your homework, you understand the business, you understand the role, and you want to demonstrate then what you can do for them. Share how you've improved things, share the outcomes, show your enthusiasm for learning, for growth, for the company culture. A thoughtful, thankful thank you message is always good. It's sort of gravy on the top, but it also sort of keeps your name sort of in the forefront of your interviewers. So look, you've thought about the role, you've tailored your resume, you've prepared your interview. So what do you do now? And I would say create this sort of 30-day plan. Think about the industries you want to work in. I like financial services or healthcare or technology. Make sure your resume and LinkedIn profile are update and clean and with some of the techniques that we talked about. Start taking on PM-like tasks so that you have some experience that you can point to. Consider some of the courses on LinkedIn or a certification, the CAPM, as we've talked about. Make a goal to reach out to, and it doesn't have to be 10, reach out to X number of professionals to interview them and get a sense of what their day is like and so on, and apply to roles. Just keep on applying. They should be relevant roles. And again, you're tailoring your resume. You might even want a cover letter where you sort of highlight how you align to the company culture. So we've talked about a lot. The good news is you don't need a PM title to start acting like one. The, I think I've been in it for 30 years. I think PM careers reward delivery, they reward leadership, initiative, getting things done, people with certain skill sets. You're going to build your credibility and your brand over time, but the path isn't linear. You're going to sort of bounce all around in your career, but it's very much achievable, especially in the PM space. There's so many opportunities in business now for that, and there's so much demand that I do believe it's achievable. But it's on you to keep learning, keep delivering, and you want to be persistent. It is a tough job market out there. You want to be persistent, but let your PM journey start today. I'm always open to talk to people, review resumes, bounce ideas off them. Hopefully, this was helpful. If you're looking at this, and put some comments, let me know if I missed anything. But thanks for watching.